Morning, Joman Joseph Sarai. Good morning, Suresh Sarai.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Very good morning.
Hearty welcome to Saurdaya College.
Thank you.
Hello, am I audible? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, Aisha. Hello.
Remember when Neil Armstrong said geologists have a saying, rocks remember? Well, and yes, I believe so do we. With a heart to make this a remarkable event, I welcome you folks to Environ 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aisha Rafiq of the first year geology, and I'm privileged to be your host of the day. Once again, I welcome each one of you to Environ 2021 International Online Lecture Series conducted by the Department of Geology of Sahadya College of Advanced Studies in association with Internal Quality Assurance Cell. Faith is the strength by which a shattered world shall emerge into light. Helen Keller. Let us all take a moment for silent prayer of gratitude. Thank you. To mark a beginning for this notable occasion, I call upon Professor Davis KJ, the head of the department, with over 31 years of experience as a professional geologist and an amazing tutor, to deliver the welcome speech.
Very morning to one and all. Very respected Reverend Father Dr. Davis Chenganiyadan, Executive Director, Principal Matthew Paul Uken, the resource personnel, and my dear participants. Geology, earth science, and geoscience are different terms with the same literal definition, that is, the study of earth. In the academic world and professional realm, the term may be interchangeable or have different connotation based on how they've been used. Geology is the older word and has much longer history. In that sense, geology is the root of the earth science. The word arose before today's scientific discipline. The first geologists were not even geologists, but they may be natural philosophers, academic types whose novelty lay in extending the methods of philosophy in the book of nature. Geologists are one who explore the rocks, map the mountains, explore the ice age, and are the one who found aquifers, planned mines, advised extractive industries. Geology is one of the original science, along with astronomy, geometry, and mathematics. Chemistry began as purified laboratory child of geology. Physics originated as an abstraction of engineering. Today, an earth science entails a much wider realm of subjects than a traditional geology degree. It studies all Earth dynamic processes. So typical work may include oceanography, climatology, meteorology, and hydrology, as well as normal traditional geology courses like mineralogy, geomorphology, petrology, and stratigraphy. In this context, we, the Department of Geology, Sakradaya College of Advanced Studies, are invited the experts related to various subjects related to earth science to this lecture series to fulfill all aspects of geology in a wide angle. That is why this series comprises oceanography, meteorology, mineral resources, aquifer discharge, coastal monitoring, and new technique of geophysics to find hidden water resources. I am Professor Davis KJ, Department of Geology, Sakradaya College of Advanced Studies. I have a great pleasure to welcome every one of you. So first of all, I would like to thank each one of you for joining this 5-day international online lecture series Environ 2021. I feel great proud to say that this webinar and lecture series have been organized by Geology Department for over the last 5 years as a chronicle huge success each year. The department organizes such as seminars, enlighten the young minds, and promote the participation of students at all levels. I bid a very warm welcome to all the renowned speakers and delegates who look out their valuable time and join us for the 5 days. We are honored to have you all with us. I would like to offer my regards to all the people who made this seminar functional in such a hard times. A special welcome to Dr. Joman Joseph, Deputy Director, who is recently retired from CEFNET, Chennai, who is going to introduce our resource personnel and their respective fields. With all words, I extremely delight to pronounce the chief guest for the day, who is none other than our Executive Director, Reverend Father Dr. Davis Chenginiadan. Father, thank you. Welcome you. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Mati Polukan, the principal, and Principal Dr. Rani Ma'am, and Dr. Joy KL of this college. I also welcome all the speakers and eminent delegates who have joined us today. I guarantee that this webinar will be productive and worth your precious time. Thanking you.
Thank you, sir. Besides, I'm extremely honored to welcome Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu to the occasion. Today is the day we're gonna break the shackles of knowledge and enjoy the glitters of wisdom. Hence, I invite Reverend Dr. Davis Chenginiadan, our beloved Executive Director, to inaugurate the international online series Environ 2021.
Dear respected Dr. Joman Joseph, Deputy Director, retired, Central Institute of Fisheries and Engineering Training, Government of India, Chennai. And respected Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu, Scientist, National Center for Earth Science Studies, Trivandrum. Dear respected Principal Dr. Matthew Paul, Vice Principal Dr. Rani M.J., Dr. Joy, HOD Davis sir, faculty members, and all participants, and especially all the guest lecturers and resource person coming on this international online lecture series Environ 2021. So this international online lecture series Environ 2021 is conducted over here, Sakradaya College of Advanced Studies, Kotagara. I'm very happy to inaugurate this seminar in respect of all the faculty members and all the participants over here. Today, Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu on submarine water discharge to the Arabian Ocean Sea and the Bay of Bengal along Indian coastal zone. He will talk on this specific subject matter. As we know, submarine groundwater discharge is a hydrological process which commonly occurs in coastal areas. It is described as submarine inflow of fresh and brackish groundwater from land to sea. submarine water ground discharge controlled by several forcing mechanisms, which cause hydraulic gradient between land and sea. Considering different regional settings, the discharge occurs. The discharge occurs in otherwise focused flow along fractures in rocky areas, dispersed flow in soft sediments, recirculation of seawater within marine sediments. So Dr. Suresh Babu will give us a thorough study about this submarine groundwater discharge Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal along Indian coastal zone. And Dr. Joman Joseph Sir, Deputy Director Sir, will give us the central keynote address today. And we are blessed with his message today. And on second day, we have resource person, Dr. P.S. Sunil, head of the Department of Marine Geology, Cochin University. He speaks on the application of GPS in earth sciences. As we know, to sustain Earth's environment while balancing human needs requires better decision making with more up-to-date information. Gathering accurate and timely information has been one of the greatest challenges facing both government and private organizations that must make these decisions. The Global Positioning System, GPS, helps us to address that need. So Dr. P.S. Sunil Sir will give us a thorough study about this subject matter. On the third day, we have Dr. A.P. Pradeep Kumar, Professor, Department of Geology, University of Kerala, who will give us a talk on cratonic blocks and mineralization in India. Dr. Pradeep Kumar is well known in this area of study. As we know, the cratons are flanked by a fold belt with or without discriminably stature or Sahir zone, suggesting that the cratons is a crustal blocks or microplates moved against each other and collided to generate these fold belts. Alternatively, these cratons could be the result of fragmentation of a large craton that constitute the Indian shield. In either case, rifting or splitting of cratons is documented by the presence of fold belts that are sandwiched between two neighboring cratons. The cratons and microplates collided and developed the fold belts that occur peripheral to the cratonic areas of the Indian shield. Dr. A.P. Pradeep Kumar will give us a thorough study on this specific topic on cratonic blocks and mineralization in India. On 29th of July, Dr. John Joseph, the consulting geoscientist of Marale, he will speak on an investigation of hidden water resources using bone electromagnetic. The key objective of this geological survey of these water resources to obtain a better understanding of nature of the contact between the Brome sand zone and lying silt zone that will identify areas of water-relative clay layers in the near surface. So that study will give us more information concerning an investigation of hidden water sources using airborne electromagnetics. And Dr. John Joseph Gill will give us a clear insight on the topic. Lastly, on fifth day, resource person is our Dr. Radish Ramachandran, Principal Scientist, Satellite Application Center, Ahmedabad. He will give us the application of remote sensing in coastal process studies. Coastal bathymetry is important for monitoring the emergence of new land, navigational channel maintenance, as well as for fish resources tracking purposes. The coastal bathymetry undergoes frequent changes due to coastal processes, such as erosion, and deposition of soil. And as a result, hydrographic charts in these areas have to be updated frequently. So this study gives us good insights in that area of research. So altogether, this international online lectures will give us a good study on geology, and the SCAS department will give us this opportunity. I am glad and happy to inaugurate this webinar for you all who are participating in this international online lectures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Father Davis Tenginiadan, for launching Environ 2021 with your wise words of positive energy. Being a role model is the most powerful form of educating. I welcome our respected principal, Dr. Matthew Paul Uken, who is an incredible inspiration for us for the talk.
Good morning to all. Distinguished Dr. Joman Joseph, Deputy Director Retired, Central Institute of Fisheries and Engineering Training, Government of India, Chief Guest and Keynote Speaker of today's International Online Lecture Series, Environ 2021. Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu, Scientist Staff, National Center for Earth Science Studies, NCESS, Thiruvananthapuram, the resource person of today's online lecture. Dear other distinguished members present here, dear Reverend Dr. Davis Chenginiadan, Executive Director, Sahridaya College of Advanced Studies, Kodagara, who has inaugurated this conference. Dear Vice Principals of the College, Dr. M.J. Rani, Dr. K.L. Joy, Head of the Department of Geology, Professor K.J. Davis, dear faculty members and students. It's my privilege and pleasure to stand before you and deliver a few words of blessings and felicitations on the inauguration of the International Online Lecture Series Environ 2021, organized by the Department of Geology in association with the IQAC of Sahridaya College of Advanced Studies, Kodagara, Kerala. Sahridaya College of Advanced Studies, established in 2012, is founded and managed by Irinjalakuda Diocesan Educational Trust with its motto as Ever to Excel. The college offers 15 UG programs, 5 PG programs, 22 certificate courses with a total of 2,337 students and 125 teaching staff. Ever since 2016, when the Department of Geology was started, it has been faring well, and with 2 Calicut University ranks last academic year, it has now earned a formidable reputation with excellent teachers and top-ranking students. I congratulate the head of the department, Professor K.J. Davis, and other faculty members for this marvelous achievement and for organizing this 5-day international online lecture series, Environ 2021. Let me express my happiness at the efforts of the department to augment our quality endeavors in the NAAC accreditation process of the Sahridaya College. Let this 5-day lecture series be a fruitful one to all the participants and to society at large. Let this lecture series create a platform to explore the recent trends in earth sciences, especially in the application of remote sensing and GPS, investigation of hidden water resources, submarine groundwater discharges, and other areas of geology. On behalf of Sahridaya College of Advanced Studies, Kodagara, I thank Dr. Joman Joseph and Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu for their gracious acceptance, distinguished presence, and look forward eagerly to their eloquent words of wisdom as keynote speaker and resource person respectively in this international webinar. Thank you, sirs. I wish this lecture series all success and extend on behalf of the college warm greetings to all the delegates, teachers, and students from other institutions and from Sahridaya College. Thank you. I conclude.
Thank you, sir. There was indeed a message to be taken to hearts. Thank you. There is nothing more attractive than a great personality, and its beauty never fades. but it's rare to find. Now, I heartily welcome Mrs. Ashbamol KB to introduce one such personality, Dr. Jomon Joseph, who is also our Davis Sir's beloved friend.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I am delighted to welcome all of you to Environ 2021. I take this as a privilege to introduce Dr. Jomon Joseph Tachil, consultant scientist, CEREM, Center for Science and Environment Management. He hard worked as Executive Director in Central Institute of Fisheries, Nautical and Engineering Training Institute, Chennai. Also, having more than 30 years of experience in the field of research, schooling, and administration matters. On behalf of everyone gathered in this virtual meeting, I welcome you, sir, for the keynote address. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good morning, all of you. Thank you for introducing me. Is it audible? Audible?
Yeah, it is audible.
Okay, thank you. Respected Father Dr. Davis Chenginiadan, Executive Director of Sahrdaya College, Dr. Matthew Paul Ukan, Principal, Professor K.J. Davis, HOD of Geology Department, other faculty members and participants, very good morning, all of you. When I have gone through the website of Sahrdaya College, I noticed the mission of this college, that is to mold a new generation in integrity of virtues and maturity of values, and to form them in true wisdom according to their God. Very notable words, that is integration of virtues. Okay. In the same manner as Professor Davis pointed out, I would like to bring your attention that when we handle a scientific issue or undertake a scientific project, there should be an integration of relevant disciplines of science. In few decades before, in seminars or conferences, usually there was no integration of different sciences. At that time, the presentation of research papers were put into in discrete compartments or in different sessions based on the nature of science. In recent years, this scenario has been totally changed by integrating the different sciences in sole research theme. Just before the spreading of pandemic COVID-19, a national conference of Ocean Society of India, named as OSICON 19, organized at Kochi in December 2019, and another conference that was an international conference held at Kochi in February 2020, named as CliffFishCon 2020. In both conferences, more than 200 research papers were presented in different disciplines of marine sciences. And the majority of papers were integrated with the climatic changes and its impact on hydrological cycle, marine ecosystem, fisheries, biogeochemical cycles, etc. You know that few days back, another international webinar was organized at the UK, named as Geo 2021. Actually, it was focused on environmental geology, but it was also an integrated learning seminar on multidisciplinary nature of environmental studies. I would like to say that all these research findings should have practical feasibility or practical applications and should have specific objectives. Otherwise, what is the use? All these bound volumes of research findings may be kept simply in library racks and bookshelves, which are used only for academic interests. Now, let us go through what are all the challenging areas in research fields for the benefit of professional newcomers and motivated students to drive their future. Let us see the strategy related to environmental issues. Some of the major environmental issues are related to the environmental pollution, climatic changes, overexploitation of natural resources, and natural calamities. A lot of research works and subsequent debates have already been done about the various branches of pollution, such as water pollution, air pollution, plastic pollution, marine pollution, etc., and put forward the remedies for pollution management. In 2000, Supreme Court of India directed a comprehensive waste management program, but unfortunately, the court directions could not be implemented effectively. First of all, the policymakers and industry should accept that there are practical solutions to tackle these problems. Secondly, the root cause of the problems and the significant impact on society and the economy must be clearly recognized by policymakers. We know that rising sea level, extreme weather conditions, new cycles of flooding and drought, and degraded air quality, etc., affect us economically, physically, socially, and psychologically. In a report published by Intergovernmental Panel on Climatic Change, that is IPCC, in 2014, it is clearly pointed out that the majority of recently observed global climatic changes are attributed to human-made greenhouse gas emissions. The amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is now in alarming rate and above the threshold that can potentially cause climatic change. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has ascended steadily and crossed the benchmark of 400 ppm in atmospheric concentration. About 3 decades ago, the climatic disasters were less than 50%, and after that, it was shoot up to 70%, 70. The rising of sea level has been reported at a rate of 0.2, 0.3 millimeter per year, and the cumulative increase in sea level is estimated as 24 centimeter during the last 140 years. It is predicted that after 50 years, most of the low-lying lands would be submerged under oceanic water. We know that high sea surface temperature generates TRS. TRS means tropical revolving storms, locally known as cyclones. SST is increased from 0.6 to 1 degree Celsius over the last century, whereby storms are able to absorb more and more energy from the warmer oceans, leading to vulnerable catastrophic events, including loss of human lives. Coming to the Indian Ocean sector, the frequency of development of cyclones in the Bay of Bengal is much greater than that of Arabian Sea. The main reason for the greater frequency of cyclones is the higher storage of heat at Bay of Bengal. In the history, the development and consequent disasters of cyclones in the Arabian Sea were very rarely reported till 2000. Now this scenario has been changed. The physical properties of Arabian sea water have been changing due to several factors. Nowadays, active studies are going on in this issue. During the last 1 year, there were 6 severe cyclones experienced at Arabian Sea, namely Hikka, Vayu, Maha, Kyar, Nisarga, and Tauta, and it should be viewed very seriously. Now let us just touch some areas of natural resources. We know that manganese noodles are also known as polymetallic noodles, which are rock concentrations deposited on the sea bottom. And it is a matter of economic interest of nation. The seabed of Central Indian Ocean is a treasure of manganese noodles, and India has a right to explore and mine these polymetallic noodles over 750,000 square kilometers. The extraction of metallic elements such as nickel, copper, cobalt, and manganese, etc., from this treasure is not economically viable at present. However, Indian scientific experts believe that it would become economically feasible within another few decades. Like manganese noodles, huge amount of methane are also stored at ocean beds of worldwide oceans in the form of solid methane hydrates, and which are considered to be large reservoir of energy required for humanity. High hydrostatic pressure and cold water conditions are the ideal conditions for the formation of methane hydrates. Warming of ocean water body may cause the hydrates to destabilize. In effect, the methane, we know that is a potential greenhouse gas, would escape from ocean to atmosphere, and it could be able to accelerate climatic changes. Now, you just think about the ejecting phenomena of methane from ocean bed to atmosphere. To study about the ejecting phenomena of methane, we should have sound knowledge of different disciplines of marine environmental sciences. There lies the significance of integration or need of integration of different disciplines. What I mentioned at the beginning of this talk is an only example. Now coming to our 5 days lecture series of this seminar, Environ 2021, which is very nicely planned by integrating different areas of advanced earth sciences. Already our father, Dr. Chigniyad's father already explained. However, I shall just mention today, first day, that is first paper is submarine groundwater discharge to the Arabian Sea at Bay of Bengal along Indian coast. Suresh Babu. Second day, application of GPS in earth sciences by Dr. P.S. Suril. Third day, protonic box and mineralization in India by Dr. J.P. Pradeep Kumar. Fourth day, an investigation of hidden water resources using airborne electromagnetics by Dr. George Joseph. Last day, that is fifth day, application of remote sensing in coastal process study by Dr. Radish Ramachandran. I am sure that all these presentations will shed a good insight about the recent trends of environment. Now I am concluding my talk by the role of climatic change and related environmental issues needs to be viewed as a public issue and requires a concerted action to implement adequate policies by involving stakeholders and experts in the relevant fields. And studies should be an integrated manner. I wish all success to the endeavor. Thank you. Thank you, one and all. Bye.
I deem it a great honor to thank you, sir, for your words. To know more about our resource person, Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu, who is a skilled and rebellious scientist, I call upon our beloved Dr. Colleen Elizabeth for her talk.
Very good morning to one and all. Today, we all are privileged to have one of the eminent resource person from NSS Trivandrum. Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu completed his MSc from Kerala University and PhD from University of Moscow, and he having research experience in Kerala beach places. Later, he worked as a visiting professor at various universities across the world, especially in Brazil and Muscat. Now, he is working as scientist in National Center for Earth Science Studies, Trivandrum. He has more than 40 publications in national and international journals. With this, let me invite Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu for the lecture.
Did you
Good
know?
morning. Hello. Hello. I think I am audible. Very good morning to all. Most respected Reverend Dr. Davis Chenginiadan, Dr. Matthew Polkan, Principal, Sahradaya College of Advanced Studies, Professor Davis, HOD, Dr. Jomon Joseph, all the faculties of Department of Geology, students, and all the participants of this webinar. At the outset, I am privileged to be invited for this seminar, and I'm happy that this opportunity is given. Let me share my presentation, and that will help us to explain the things with the help of certain images and results. Hope this presentation is visible, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So this particular topic, which is called submarine groundwater discharge, is a silent transfer of fresh water to the sea. What does it mean? Normally, the groundwater releases to the sea as base flow along with the river water through estuaries. But between the estuaries or between the river basins, the coastal catchments collect this groundwater and releases separately without any surface manifestation also. So this in sandstones, this will be just a granular transfer. There will not be any unidirectional flow or any spring or any surface signature at all. But there are certain occasions where we can notice this as springs also. This is considered to be a part of the groundwater cycle, water cycle, just because normally we have not accounted this silent discharge to the sea so far. Perhaps, most of us noticed in some locations, in very close to the shoreline, there used to be sweet water. People use it for different purposes. So these are some ground signatures available. There could be locations where no such indirect or direct implications or signatures or knowledge available on this seaward movement of groundwater. This leakage or this release of groundwater, if we can account it, it can be used effectively for the coastal communities. Now, I will present this topic of submarine groundwater discharge. What is this and how does it take place? What is the global scenario on it? What we know about within India, and how do we investigate this process or this phenomenon, and how much we know today. Now, this submarine groundwater discharge on one side, it is simply the direct discharge of groundwater to sea. So that means if SGD or fresh SGD. And on the other hand, this is a recirculated groundwater. Recirculated groundwater means temporarily the seawater will be in the coastal aquifers, mix with the existing water there and recirculate. In this process, a number of pollutants or contaminants will be transferred to the sea, to the shallow sea. And there are occurrences where deep pore water upwelling, that means which is coming from deeper aquifers. If the coastal aquifers are extending towards shallow sea or towards the offshore, there will be if the hydrostatic or hydraulic gradient is good enough, there will be leakage, for which we will not have any direct observation at all. Then there could be offshore submarine springs. This means through hard rock, if it could be fractures or lineaments. If there is a reservoir in the upland side and it is cut across, that will act as the conduit. Or in limestones or carbonaceous rocks, we will have such unidirectional flow, for which also this groundwater discharge takes place to the sea. And there is another method, large-scale cyclic movement of water by thermal heating. This is nothing but, wherever we have hot water springs or radioactivity taking place, there will be a movement of water. So these elevated temperatures, whether it is 60 degree, 70 degree temperature, this allows this groundwater flow velocity to increase, and there will be movement of water from land to sea. Actually, this process has not been received good attention till recently. According to Web of Science, in 1980s and 90s, the annual publications in this field was just 1 to 4. And in 2008, it increased to 79. And 2014, the publications has gone up to, the number of publications have gone up to 123. And today, around 500 publications on various related topics: hydrology, hydrogeology, biogeochemistry, then pollution, pure marine biological studies. So all this is related to this release of groundwater to the sea. Sorry. Now, as I said, first process is the difference in hydraulic gradient. Then another driving force is tidal pumping. It's a regular phenomenon. So this also creates and releases to the sea. Another one is wave generated, which is a continuous process. And then these are the driving forces, which allows this discharge. And upland recharge, that's what we talked about it a bit earlier, using the conduits or the connected fractures or lineaments, and geothermal heating. So according to the type of these aquifers, whether it is unconfined aquifer on the top or confined aquifer in different layers, the release could be at different zones in the seaside. This is a recent compilation of knowledge on these things in different margins, continental margins, and certain areas we have very good knowledge on the quantification, how much is going in a year, and what are the flux, what are the contaminants it is transporting. And this activity is growing up largely to understand two things. One, whether this water can be used effectively. And second one, we know only the surface water transfer with regard to the nutrient and other contaminants. So what is the role of this SGD in contaminant transport? This is a 2019 publication, after which we have some more knowledge where this phenomena exist along the coastal zone. These are the expected zones, and this is the reported location. So that means here we have perennial discharge of water. So all along we can see there are such zones. Now, if we take a synoptic picture of our peninsular India, we know that the total precipitation, including rainfall and snowfall, it is 4,000 cubic kilometers. This much volume of water comes to land every year. return, I mean, the
Sir, the mic is mute. Can you please unmute the mic?
yeah. No presentation is visible? No.
No, sir.
Is it visible now?
Not yet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, thank you. So something happened in between. So I think I stopped here, isn't it? I mean, this slide was visible, isn't it? Professor Davis?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So now what we know about these total rainfall and total snowfall, total precipitation or total amount what we receive is 4,000 kilometer cube. From this, actually, around 1,500 returns to the atmosphere, either as evaporation or evapotranspiration through the plants. And around 500 goes to the aquifer. So that means it is totally around 2,000. And 1,869 is the number which we know as, releasing to the sea as surface runoff along the rivers. So there is a deficit of about 150. So this is the amount actually going to the sea, which was neglected so far. And these numbers were generated based on a large number of studies and observations over decades, and the Planning Commission has approved it. So this is the total numbers for major components of water cycle. So this particular component is the one which need to be established. And at present, what we know is the SGD rate is equivalent to 1 to 10 cubic meter. One means 1,000 liters per meter per day. So this is the rate of discharge we know in different segments. With regard to the coastal area, we know that around 32 lakh square kilometer is the coastal aquifer or coastal zone, then which includes 7,500 kilometers of coastline, including the islands. And these aquifers are highly productive, which is equivalent to many other good aquifers in the country. So it is already being used, and at the same time it is subjected to different types of pressures, including sea level rise, coastal erosion, pollution controls, and things like that. Hello?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, your presentation is not visible.
Yeah. It's okay, isn't it?
Yeah, now it's visible.
Now, this coastal zone has two types. One is coast of emergence and another one is coast of submergence. On eastern side, the Bengal Bay of Bengal side, we have an emergent coast throughout. on the western side, we have submerged coast in the northern side, and towards Mangalore, Kerala, and south, we have an emergent coast with the tertiary deposits and other quaternary deposits. These coastal deposits or coastal alluvium, silt, sand, clay, and carbonate rocks. These sedimentary rocks form the major aquifers. Now, once we look at it geographically, we can see that 9 coastal states, 5 in the western side and 4 in the eastern side, they are the zones which water is a state subject, and which controls this resource utilization. Once we take one aquifer unit with known boundaries on either side, on all sides, spatially as well as vertically, we can see it has two. One is a dynamic resource and another one is a static resource. This is a unit in Odisha, coastal aquifer unit. So the total groundwater availability in the dynamic zone, which means whatever being received every year and either discharged or withdrawn by pumping. So that amount is 1,100 million cubic meters. Around 500 is the draft or the pumping, and this means half of it, 52%, is being tapped every year. But in different types of aquifers, unconfined, confined, and hard rock, these are the total storage availability. This includes both dynamic resource as well as the static resource. Certain groundwater is with the soil and with the moisture, and we cannot extract it back. So the fresh groundwater in this out of this fresh groundwater is in alluvium it is 521, and in hard rock it is 367. We can see that the total water in hard rock is in the fresh, and it also contains certain amount of saline groundwater. Whatever we see in this yellow color and the saffron color, these beds carry groundwater with brackish or saline water. So this is the way we need to establish each coastal aquifer unit, the volume that it carries, as well as to examine the flux it discharges every year. When we take the status of Kerala, we can see that on the top we have an alluvium or a laterite, and towards north we have a thin tertiary deposits, and when it comes to Vaikam, around 600 is the total depth of it. So a sizable amount transferred through this method. Now, what are the societal applications of submarine groundwater discharge? Number one, as we have mentioned, this is the optimum pumping, how much water we can tap without inviting saltwater intrusion. So this is one aspect. And the second one, we know that there are a number of phenomena like algal bloom. Algal bloom is like eutrophication in the seaside, red tides with biological influence, then mud banks, gas hydrates release, hydrogen sulfide release, and these are all related to the mixing of fresh groundwater with the sea. So this freshening takes place not only through the surface water, but through this groundwater also. Now, once we know the groundwater or the aquifer strength to carry and conduct water, its influence on sea level rise, temperature rise, all this can be mitigated. There are certain common ways of looking at it. This one is the thermal imaging. The temperature variation gives an indication. The other one is plankton density. Certain species thrive in such zones, and natural tracers like radium or radon. These groundwater temperatures are essentially more or less of the temperature values are stable throughout the year. That is the basic concept. And whenever, even daytime or seasonally, this SST varies significantly. As we all know, this cold water goes down or salt water goes down. Fresh water comes up or warm water floats. So these are the basic principles which we use to study this phenomenon. Methods. So far we have been discussing about the presence of this process. Now, how do we identify it? Which are the areas and at what depth? And how do we quantify it? So what is the total volume in a year or in a month, in a day, and from which location? So there are a number of methods available. And the first one is the existing database on water table. Different government agencies maintain these water table levels, which will allow us to create water table contours and find whether it is abutting in this shoreline. So that is an indication. Second one is physico-chemical anomalies of groundwater, primarily salinity content in the groundwater, and natural radioactive isotopes. Resistivity, electrical resistivity, or GPR, ground penetrating radar. So these are some of the ways to identify this in the landward side. Similarly, satellite imaging with the thermal band, either using from satellites or drone based. Then identification of biological anomalies in the sea. What about the plankton and identification of these species and its concentration? Then radium is a good isotope, and seismic survey, another geophysical technique to identify this. So once we know these areas, we need to quantify them. There are direct estimation methods using nested piezometers in the land side or seepage meter in the seaside. Then conventional water balance, mass balance using different tracers, then mathematical models. That is a very robust one. Once we have all these data, we can put it in the model and check how does it work. What is the flux? Then nested piezometers in the seafloor. It's a really sophisticated technique and a costly technique, but it gives very good information right from the shallow sea. These, whatever we have talked about it, I have just compiled it here. So different driving forces, how this phenomenon takes place. These are different techniques of identifying these things, and the methods which we have just now talked about it, and compiling all these, this process called the submarine groundwater discharge can be. Oh, I don't know why this is often. Yeah. Now, once we know these techniques, we have formed a team which have deliberated and worked out this uniform methodology so that, different participating teams do not work in different directions. So we have formulated the technique and then started investigating right from Gujarat coast to West Bengal side. Right now, there are certain areas where we need to have information. Otherwise, every 1 kilometer along the coast, we have an information on this groundwater status. This is a sorry. So this is a location where we have, this land side and the seaward side. We have this transfer of this groundwater. We can see that, this particular portion, for example, having different colors. This is a thermal image processed one. So once we know that the area is prone for mixing, then identify the locations, city in which this movement takes place. This movement takes place. So this is actually a very small area of 50 centimeters, but and the temperature gradient is also very high, but we may not have this much gradient. Even 1 degree or even half degree difference, you will be able to pick up the temperature variation. It's a very powerful tool where we cannot have any physical measurements. We can have the knowledge of this groundwater discharge. Now, these are, for example, some of our areas where we have identified through water table positions. These are the locations where we can really observe in the field as well as through the secondary data itself. And these are the zones of saltwater contamination. This is actually reflected in the thermal image of satellite of Landsat. This is the area where we have, Varkala, then Adimalathura, some of the very prominent locations of water discharge. And similarly, in the northern side, so there are indications where we have this discharge. This is a regional picture or a synoptic picture. Once we know the area, then we can observe it through unmanned aerial vehicles or drones using high resolution cameras. So this is in one location. This is a small stream coming in where we know we can see the temperature difference. Otherwise, in other areas, wherever there is no other signature, these thermal images will give the release of groundwater across the shore. This is another technique which we have just mentioned about ERT or electrical resistivity tomography using geophysical surveys. So all along the coast, wherever we have some suspicion, we can carry out this survey, and based on that, these locations we can now identify the thickness of this interface vertically as well as laterally. This is towards the eastern side, how much it goes this interface. So what is the location of fresh interface? I don't know why is often disappearing this. Excuse me, can you see my slide?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay, thank you. Now, suppose in one location, there are a number of such tomograph profiles we have seen. In one location, which is 250 meters from the shoreline, we can see the different layers. The minimum resistivity is from 0.1 to 2000 ohm meter. is visible. So we can estimate the different layers which allows either recirculated seawater or freshwater movement. Based on this information, we can recreate the subsurface lithology wherever we don't have direct borehole log data. This is the radon unit, radon measuring unit, which either using samples or continuous mode in 24 hours or few hours at site, we can observe the concentration of radon in the groundwater or surface water to compare. So this presence of groundwater is the concentration of the mixed zone. Now, this is the pathway identification in a known location. So this blue path gives the transfer of, the route of this groundwater movement. So there will be an upper saline plume in between, and it finds the way. This is the seepage zone during low tide. This is the intertidal zone. During low tide, this portion allows this discharge. So using a nested piezometers, number of piezometers across the shoreline as well as along the shoreline, we can find out this movement or the pathway of this process. This is the shore in Varkala. Now, another method is to suck using the push point sampler, which is a very useful tool to pump out the using syringe the pore water up to 1.5 to 2 meter depth. Normally, as I told you before, this fresh water being in a tendency to float, when it reaches to the sea, it comes towards the upper side. So in the intertidal zone, the zone between the high tide and the low tide, we can observe this phenomenon, and this is a work which allowed us to estimate the discharge in Kozhikode coast as 900 cubic meter per year per meter. So this is the annual discharge. Now, once we get these things in different seasons, this is in June, December, so we can present it, how this water table level is and whether this allows discharge or not. So this is a 3D model concept. Now, there are two components. One is groundwater and the other one is pore water. So in the pore water, in the groundwater, so we have measured all along the coast. Similarly, different teams are working in different segments. This is 640 kilometer stretch zone. So here, whatever we have observed along the shore, so this is from Kanyakumari to Kasaragod. So here in between, we can see Trivandrum, Kollam, Alappuzha, Kozhikode, and things like that. So this is everywhere in the base, the same thing. And we have a different proxies, different parameters. For example, this is water table level, groundwater table level. There is no significant difference except in some locations. And this is temperature. For temperature, there is a variation in February. So this is easy electrical conductivity. These are the coastal wells. Here, a distinct variation is seen with respect to either DO or ORP. So there is a difference in the DO level. That is in the coastal groundwater. The groundwater is checked along the wells available near to the shoreline. This is pore water. Pore water is exactly along the beach. So we have artificially pulled the water available and checked its its quality. So again the same in x-axis the same thing, and we have temperature, electrical conductivity, pH, ORP and DO. In pore water we have a very clear variation in different seasons. So this is an observation continuously for an year to account this process of transfer, groundwater transfer. There are certain other tracers like salinity, temperature and radon, which also gives this this confirmatory test. Now, if it is fresh in the well water as well as in the pore water, if it is both fresh, it is a fresh SGD. So that means water is in the net transfer is from aquifer to sea. And if it is on both sides, if it is saline, it is the reverse process. Seawater is trying to contaminate the aquifer. And whatever we have in between, fresh and brackish water combinations, either in the well water or pore water, it's all meant for different types of recirculated submarine groundwater discharge. Now, once we know this qualitatively, our next job is to quantify it or to calculate the total flux. What is the volume going on? So these are the different potential zones. This is how these catchments, coastal catchments, are identified to calculate the total volume. Now here only one point, an average of 6% of rainfall is lost as SGD in a year. This is the observation. Average discharge rate is 500 cubic meter per year per meter. So this is the annual, if we take it from January to December. So this is the total net discharge. Here we can see these blue lines are the vertical lines are the rainfall present, and the last one is the draft or the pumping of water, how much water is being pumped out for various purposes, whether it is industrial, agriculture or potable. But along the coastal zone we have mainly for potable purpose only. Now this is considered as the SGD or the leakage of water. This is the total water is going to around 6%, 148. This is the summary in the with respect to annual. Now, once we take seasonal, different seasons, we can see that it varies actually. So if we have monsoon discharge, allows this discharge, the post-monsoon season, it reduces a bit. And perennial SGD, what is happening throughout the year is 104 kilometers only. So I don't know, I'm taking too much of time. I need another 15-20 minutes if it in this speed.
Okay, sir, you're on.
Okay. So then, the three catchments we have identified, we have shown just now between the adjacent coast between the river basins. So once we check this flux value with respect to tide, so these dots are tidal variations. With respect to tide, these drops we can ignore actually. This is an error in the values. Otherwise, we can see how this electrical conductivity and water level positions. So there is, with respect to the tidal variation, there is a reflection in the water table level, but not in either in the temperature, this red line, or this saffron color is easy. That is not reflected. But once you check a similar observation in different coastal zones from the shoreline, here it is shoreline, this is cliff, this is the land side. So in that case, we can see this is the tidal variation. And with respect to this tidal variation, we can see that only the NS1, which is closer to the shoreline, that is not showing any significant variation. Otherwise, it actually it reflects the tidal pressure. These are the three catchments. So we have put whatever information we have gathered into a groundwater modeling software. So once we know the geology, rainfall, borehole data, surface elevation or the topography, the topsoil conditions, then water table, water level observations, and the pumping of data, all these we can put it and create a conceptual model and a simulation model using the software. Once we generate it and the model is converged, we can change different parameters, whether it is aquifer parameters like hydraulic conductivity, rainfall, recharge, and see how does it varies with respect to the observed heads in the field. So we have created the model and checked how this water table fluctuates. And we can see in this portion, the northern portion, the velocity vectors, I mean the groundwater flow is towards seaside. It is not. So that of transfer or the shoreline which allows this transfer is in the northern side of the aquifer. So fresh SGD is totally, this is the value 1000 cubic meter per day, and the shore length out of this total shore length 9 kilometers is actually discharging it. Now that was the steady state, and once we know the values in different months, we can calculate it as a transient state modeling or the dynamic changes from different, one season to the other season. This is in the next catchment, Kadinamkulam catchment, did the same exercise and calculated the flux or the total groundwater being discharged. And we will compare these two because these are two interesting catchments, very adjacent, but they behave differently. For example, the total shoreline length is 20 kilometers, this is 25 kilometers. And the length of active SGD is 9 kilometers, 9.5 kilometers, and this is the whole 25 kilometers is actually discharging. And the catchment area is more or less same. So the freshwater discharge considerably varies actually. It's around 60%. Now the third catchment. So these two we have just seen, and this is the third catchment. And in this third catchment, 4 layers are there, and we have seen that the transfer varies from 159 to 1,800 cubic meters per day. Now this is how we have to along the coastal zone to calculate the total flux. Now, once we have a control on these on the land side, we need to verify such discharges in the sea side. So there are different methods available for verification of this discharge process in the seaside. one is salinity and water temperature, and the other one is radium. Radium is a good isotope, and then biological proxies. So plankton community and algal community in those locations, wherever we have some inference on the land side. So we have conducted a cruise and collected the samples and checked its the nutrient content, the stable isotope, then radium isotope, and confirmed this process. That was a marine survey using cruise. This is a boat survey from the shore up to 4 kilometers in different transects. So here the main interest is to check the different nutrients. And we have seen that increases, these nutrients are low. There is no of nutrient Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think the presentation has gone. Okay. So this is the picture we have seen, whether it is dissolved phosphorus or silica or nitrogen. So we have seen that where there is salinity increase up to 4 kilometers, there is a negative correlation. Now I would like to conclude with what we have been talking so far. One is that the cliff sections of tertiary sedimentary formation, the discharge rate is around 700. But where and fractured zones, the transfer is around 900, which is slightly higher than the normal tertiary sedimentary formations. Now, neotectonism, that has favored this process of submarine groundwater discharge to maintain higher hydraulic gradient as well as to create a conduit, so as a driving force. Then there are 9 critical zones with 106 or 107 kilometers out of 640 kilometer, which has proven SGD throughout the year. So average of 6% is lost in this process. And nutrient fluxes are comparatively high in the Alappuzha region. This is what we have observed. So in another manner, we need to know how much nitrogen is, because nitrogen is a very important component in the nutrient transport. So how much nitrogen is being lost in this process, because this is the amount being fixed in the land side, and once it is mixed with the groundwater and in a dissolved form, certain amount is going. This is the global ocean status. So what is the contribution from the Indian Peninsula in this process? And this carbon is another important area which also needs importance in this study. Apart from the direct utilization of this resource, how this particular component is reacting to the carbon capture and carbon sequestration process, this role of SGD. Now, this submarine groundwater discharge is also important for emerging contaminants. Emerging contaminants, now we know these are microplastics, pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, certain things which are actually enriched in groundwater and being transferred. So just like the surface water contamination, being the higher residence time, such emerging contaminants also getting increased, and its flux is an area which needs to be investigated, and its role has to be understood properly. Now, this is a small video, just showing how much importance is there in identifying this resource as well as in extracting it. Just 3 minutes. So. So in the case of oil being pumped out, people are interested even to get water from the seaside. Suppose our coastal aquifers can be understood properly, we can see that managed aquifer recharge can be done. So. So the enthusiasm in finding such resources and tapping, so this is what it conveys. So in other words, before it reaches to the sea, whether we can tap some of this water, and whether we can recharge these aquifers in a managed manner. So this is what I wanted to convey. So I thank you once again, and if there are some questions related to it, I'll be happy to respond to that. Hello.
Thank you, sir. That was a spectacular talk and an insightful presentation. Now, I would like to inform you all that the feedback form is available in the chat box, and I request every participant to fill it for the certificates. Like said by Steve Jobs, there is always that one thing to learn. It's time we made our queries answered. Students, teachers, and all the members, I request if you have any questions regarding the talk, please feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat box.
Sir, may I ask one question?
Yeah, please, sir.
It is not related to STD, but
Right, sir.
it is related to mud banks. Nowadays, mud bank, the frequencies are very less under the Kerala coast. Before it was very vast, and frequently we can meet with mud banks during the monsoon time. What is the reason for that nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, we are also noticing this practice. Actually, last 10 years at least, these mud banks are not being formed the way in which it was. So perhaps it has something to do with the climate change. This is the observation. Either water temperature or the extreme events, the flooding events. This is changing the hydrochemistry and the coagulation process. Whether it is what is happening. This basically a lot of silt and clay coming into suspension. So that process is not taking place to attract fishes, and this is happening. So last 10 years we are not seeing it, but the total rainfall is saying, but the pattern has really changed. So
that means you can say any marine pollution or land grade pollution, something like that. It is due to contamination of.
It need not be contamination. It could be more related to the pH conditions, as well as the temperature rise, temperature variation. So otherwise pollution load, would not have disappeared this all of a sudden. That would have been a slow process in changing that phenomenon. Currently, what we are seeing is in some years, in none of the places it is being formed, and even if it is formed, it is for a small time and gets. Otherwise, it used to be a couple of months or 1 month, 3 months time. It used to be in suspension. So that is not happening. That means the slow discharge or slow rhythm which was existing, that has gone. So either the dilution is taking place or the temperature is giving some signature of not forming this process. Pollution if the pollution is the reason, then the variation would have been much more slower than this faster. This is my observation.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions? All the participants?
Sir, one more question I would like to ask regarding the
Yes.
ECD. There is a surface flow of groundwater to the ocean area. This is any chance for the saltwater intrusion through this water, and up to what level or up area to the land side?
So actually, this you mean a landslide? You mentioned
Intrusion.
Saltwater intrusion. Yeah, this is actually the opposite process of saltwater intrusion. So as I mentioned, there is a fresh discharge, there is a recirculated discharge, and there is an extreme case of saltwater intrusion. With respect to Kerala, the geology as well as the surface topography is such that large-scale seawater intrusion is impossible because of the inclined state of this lithology as well as So the hydraulic gradient will not allow to encroach the sea towards land. Only thing, it will be in the low-lying areas or where there is a large-scale pumping, which allows this upcoming effect. But otherwise, if we can maintain the water table above MSL at a desired position, naturally this process, this seawater intrusion will not take place. If you disturb the equilibrium forcefully by pumping out, extra pumping, then only this saltwater intrusion takes place. Otherwise, the scenario is such that only through surface water, the saline water encroachment is there, not through the aquifer.
So one more question.
Yes.
In the Workley area, you can see the one freshwater spring is flowing to the seaside, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any chance for collecting such a water for the drinking purpose, for the utilization for the public?
Yeah, actually, their only thing is that there is some biological contamination. Otherwise, the water is good enough, pure. But what we see in the Varkala cliff is actually above a carbonaceous clay. There are multiple levels of water table in Varkala formation there because of the clay layers in between. So whatever we are seeing on the beach side, this is above a carbonaceous clay layer, which is sometimes it is even as a perched water table. So the extension we don't know once we start pumping it. So the natural flow can be allowed, and as you know, I mean, people are using for bathing, washing, etc. already for different potable use. Because of the biological contamination, it is at present directly it cannot be consumed as drinking water. But without pumping, with the natural flow, we can have those springs can be used. But at the same time, not in the spring side, still in the eastern side, there are potential areas from where we can pump out water and see that water table is not depressed below the MSL, and keep at least 1 meter above the MSL, so that flow reversal is not taking place. That's a good tertiary aquifer actually, Varkalai. And essentially Varkalai municipality and Varkalai formation is supported by that sandstone beds only. Yeah, I think I'm clear to you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I guess we have a question here.
Yeah.
It's from
Is submarine groundwater is related to hydrology or marine geology? In which section submarine groundwater discharge is focused? Actually, this particular term, the submarine groundwater discharge, has come up recently. Otherwise, it is a part of the hydrogeology. Hydrology is a civil engineering subject essentially, but hydrogeology is something which geologists are concerned about it because it includes geochemical and aquifer characteristics also. Now, it is part of marine geology also, in the sense the health of marine fauna and the marine ecosystem, then mangrove areas, shallow marine waters. This actually is determined by the amount of water released to the sea. So this is so far we have been worried about only the base flow groundwater along the rivers and through the estuaries. This is a particular segment of aquifer characteristics wherein subterranean estuary takes place. So as somebody was mentioned in the morning, this is an interdisciplinary area which is interested to hydrogeologists, marine biologists, marine geologists, and there are chemical processes taking place, pollution aspects involved in it. So it is more of a interdisciplinary area rather than related to, say, hydrology or marine geology. Now, I don't know. That is what it is, I think.
Well, so I guess that's the end of our session. Thank you all. A grateful heart is a magnet of miracles. I invite Nanda Priya of third year geology to deliver the vote of thanks.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, Nandapriya, you can proceed.
Yes.
Thank you, Aisha. Good morning, everyone. Respected dignitaries present here, faculty members, and dear participants. Myself, Nandapriya, from third year BSc Geology. On behalf of Sahadaya College of Advanced Studies and Environ 2021, I would like to show my courtesy to our chief guest, Dr. D.S. Suresh Babu, who spared his valuable time for the webinar to help us explore more about the submarine groundwater discharge to Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal along Indian coastal zone, where we came to know more about the silent transfer of fresh water to sea, about the coastal aquifer system in India, the societal application and investigation methods of SGD, and various other features about SGD. Thank you, sir, for your interesting and enlightening class. Next, I would like to express my profound gratitude to Dr. Jomon Joseph for the keynote address. It was a very helpful session to know about the challenging areas in geology for the upcoming students like us. Thank you, sir, for your valuable information. Now, I would like to acknowledge our Executive Director, Reverend Dr. Davis Chingniadan, and Principal Dr. Matthews Paul Uken for their presence and support for conducting webinars of Environ 2021. I would love to express my hearty thanks to our HOD, Professor Davis KJ, for his guidance and the teachers who worked with him to make this seminar a successful event. Finally, yet importantly, a great appreciation to all the participants who choose to be live with us and attend this webinar with an inquiring mind and making this event a successful one. Once again, thank you all for your presence and participation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much for your cooperation and your good presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to it.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir.
Once again, thank you all for your attention. Stay safe and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Aisha, for your good presentation. Okay.
Thank you, sir.